Imagine living in the year 1800. No internet, no airplanes, not even cars. Everything moves by horse. If you want to travel between cities, it takes days. If you want to send a message, it could take weeks or never arrive at all. The world isn't just slow, it's trapped. Distance is a barrier, time is an obstacle, and progress moves at the speed of muscle. Then suddenly, an idea appears. Strange, dangerous, almost ridiculous. A machine that doesn't need horses, doesn't need human strength, only steam. And somehow, it can pull tons of iron across the land. To people back then, this wasn't innovation. It was madness. The kind of idea that would get you laughed out of the room, almost like telling people today that flying cars will soon fill the skies. But history has a pattern. Every time the world changes, it begins with something that sounds impossible. And this time, it began with steam. Long before trains became symbols of progress, they were symbols of failure. And at the center of that failure was a man most people have never heard of. Richard Trevithick. He didn't look like a genius. He didn't act like one either. He was rough, stubborn, and completely obsessed with an idea no one else believed in. At the time, steam engines already existed, but they were slow, heavy, and stationary, used mostly to pump water out of mines. Most engineers believed steam had limits. Push it too far, and it becomes unstable, too dangerous, too unpredictable. But Trevithick saw something different. He saw power. He believed steam didn't have to sit still. It could move. Not just machines, but weight, distance, the world itself. So in 1804, he built it, the first steam-powered locomotive, a roaring, shaking iron machine, driven by high-pressure steam, something many believed was outright dangerous. And for a brief moment, it worked. It moved. It pulled heavy wagons along iron rails. A glimpse of a future no one else could yet understand. But the world wasn't ready. The tracks cracked under the weight. The system failed. The infrastructure simply couldn't support what he had created. And to everyone watching, this wasn't a breakthrough. It was proof. Proof that the idea was flawed. Proof that it would never work. Investors walked away. Support disappeared, and the laughter only grew louder. Still, Trevithick refused to stop. He kept building, kept experimenting, kept chasing a future no one else could see. But belief has a cost, and eventually, he paid it. The money ran out, the opportunities vanished, and slowly, so did he. When Richard Trevithick died, he died in poverty. No fame, no recognition, almost completely forgotten. But history tells a different story. Because he wasn't wrong. He was simply too early, and sometimes, the person who changes the world never lives long enough to see it. By the late 1820s, the idea refused to die. Trevithick was gone. His machines had failed. And yet, the vision remained. Others had picked up where he left off. Engineers, inventors, dreamers, all chasing the same impossible goal. A machine that could move the world. But there was a problem. No one could agree if it actually worked. Some believed locomotives were the future. Others insisted they were dangerous toys. Expensive, unreliable, and doomed to fail. So in 1829, someone decided to settle the argument once and for all. Not with theory, not with debate, but with a competition, the Rainhill Trials, a public ispitania, a proving ground, a spectacle. The rules were simple. Build a locomotive, make it pull weight, make it last, make it fast, and prove that steam could be trusted. Because whoever won this competition would decide the future of transportation. It wasn't just engineering anymore. It was a showdown. 5 machines entered, each one representing a different vision of the future. Some were heavy and powerful. Others were experimental, almost reckless. One even relied on a bizarre mechanical system instead of traditional steam pressure. But among them, one stood out. The rocket, designed by George Stephenson, and his son, Robert. At first glance, it didn't look revolutionary. It was smaller than some of its competitors, lighter, simpler, almost unimpressive. But inside, it was something entirely different. The rocket used a multi-tube boiler, a design that dramatically increased efficiency. More heat, more steam, more power, and more importantly, consistency. While other machines struggled to maintain pressure, the rocket stayed stable, controlled, reliable. And when the trials began, everything changed. One by one, the competitors started to fail. Engines overheated, parts broke, systems collapsed under stress. What was supposed to be a competition slowly turned into a survival test. And through it all, the rocket kept going, steady, relentless, unstoppable. Then came the moment no one was prepared for. Speed. The rocket accelerated, faster than anything people had ever experienced on land. Nearly 30 miles per hour. Today, that sounds ordinary. Back then, it was terrifying. People watching from the sidelines weren't just impressed. They were shocked. This wasn't a machine anymore. It felt like something unnatural, something that wasn't supposed to exist. And yet, there it was, moving faster than horses, faster than anything they understood. When the trials ended, there was no debate. The rocket had won, decisively, and in that moment, everything changed. Because this wasn't just a victory, it was proof. Proof that locomotives could work. Proof that they could be reliable. Proof that the future Trevithick imagined was real. And just like that, the world crossed a line it could never go back from. Steam wasn't an experiment anymore. It was the beginning of a new era. But even after the Rainhill Trials proved that locomotives worked, not everyone was convinced. In fact, many people were terrified. Because the problem wasn't just the machine, it was speed. For the first time in human history, people were moving faster than the human body had ever experienced. And that created fear, real fear. Some doctors warned that traveling at high speeds could cause the human body to suffocate. They believed the air would rush past too quickly, making it impossible to breathe. Others claimed that the vibrations from the train would damage internal organs, that the human body simply wasn't built to handle such violent motion. And then, things got even stranger. There were serious concerns that women's bodies would be permanently harmed by train travel, that their reproductive systems would be affected, that the speed itself could cause long-term damage. Farmers had their own fears. They believed passing trains would terrify livestock, that cows would stop producing milk, that animals would panic at the sight and sound of these machines. Some even argued that crops would fail simply because of the unnatural force of locomotives cutting through the land. To many people, trains weren't progress. They were unnatural. A machine moving faster than any animal, faster than anything nature had designed, felt wrong. Almost like humans were breaking a rule they weren't supposed to break. But history has shown something, again and again. Fear always comes first. Understanding comes later. Because no matter how strange, no matter how impossible something feels, progress doesn't wait for people to feel comfortable. It moves forward anyway. And soon, the world would have no choice but to catch up. Once trains proved they could work, they spread faster than anyone expected. Across Britain, then across Europe, and soon, across entire continents. Steel tracks began cutting through landscapes, over hills, across rivers, into cities that had once felt isolated. And suddenly, distance started to collapse. Journeys that once took days now took hours. Places that felt far away became reachable. For the first time in history, movement was no longer the limitation, but the most unexpected change was time itself. Before trains, time was local. Every town followed its own clock. Noon was simply when the sun was highest in the sky. It didn't need to be precise, because nothing moved fast enough to care. But trains changed that. Railways needed schedules, coordination, precision down to the minute. You couldn't run a network of moving machines if every town lived in a different time. So something extraordinary happened. Time was standardized. Railway time. For the first time, entire regions synchronized their clocks, not based on the sun, but based on machines. That system would later evolve into time zones, a structure that still controls how the modern world operates. But the impact didn't stop there. Trade accelerated, industries expanded, resources moved faster than ever before. Factories grew, cities exploded in size, economies connected across vast distances. The train didn't just move people. It rewired civilization. It turned the world from something vast and disconnected into something smaller, faster, and linked together. And once that transformation began, there was no going back. The train didn't begin as a symbol of progress. It began as an idea. People laughed at. Too dangerous, too unrealistic, too far ahead of its time. Richard Trevithick died believing he had failed. But history tells a different story, because progress doesn't always reward the first believer. Sometimes it simply waits. It waits until the world is ready, until the technology catches up, until someone else picks up the idea and pushes it further. The train was never just a machine. It was proof that limits are often illusions, that what seems impossible today can become ordinary tomorrow, and that every revolution begins the same way, with doubt, with resistance, with people saying, "This will never work." Today, we stand at the edge of new ideas once again. Artificial intelligence, space travel, technologies that still feel uncertain, even unsettling. But if history has taught us anything, it's this. Somewhere right now, there is an idea that sounds just as crazy as a steam engine pulling iron across the land. And one day, it will change everything. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe, because we break down the ideas, the people, and the hidden moments that change the world forever. New videos every week.